What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the All-Star game yesterday, because what the All-Star game means for the regular season, that it's basically the halfway point. We got a couple of days here with rest, so I figured it would be the perfect time to go over what I would grade the first half of this Red Sox season. We're going to grade every single player that was on this team in the first half. We're also going to grade the front office and Chaim Bloom, and we're going to grade Alex Cora and the managing staff. But before we get into that, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit the subscribe button if you hadn't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys are hitting the like button on these videos, as it helps it out a ton and would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. Alright, so what I made here is basically just a tier list. It goes from S being the absolute best you could have possibly been in the first half to F being the absolute worst. We also have a section here for guys who just simply, I don't think, really made that much of an impact on the first half of the 2022 season. And before we get into this, I just want to say that this is just my opinion. This is not absolute truth. This isn't the only way to grade this team in the first half. So just keep that in mind as we go through. And we're going to start with Christian Arroyo. Now, Christian Arroyo was hurt a lot of this year, but when he was here on the team, he wasn't doing everything he could do. He had a couple of games where he really brought himself out, but the fact that he has not made that transition into the outfield very well, combined with the fact that his hitting tool this year just isn't what it had been in the past, we're going to put him in that D category. The next guy we're going to talk about is Austin Davis, and I'm going to put him in the B category. I really do think he was criminally underused in this first half, but when he was used, he was really solid. He had a couple of tough games in this first half, but that tends to happen with relievers, right? No one's shut out every single time, so I'm gonna put Davis in the B category. I'm hoping that they end up using him more in the second half of this season. I really think he could be someone to lean on in that bullpen. This third guy we're talking about, Matt Barnes, we're right to the F category. I don't even think we really need to talk about this too much. Matt Barnes in the F category. The next guy we're talking about, Jackie Bradley Jr. While Jackie Bradley Jr. does have some value with his defensive skills, his offensive skills are just so poor this year that you're gonna have to put him in that F category. He has had a couple of clutch hits, but I don't think he's been better than Christian Arroyo or as good as Christian Arroyo, so we're gonna put him in that F category. Ryan Brazier. I'm gonna put Ryan Brazier in the D category. I think that he's had a lot of really great moments this year, but he's also had some really tough moments, especially in critical spots, so Ryan Brazier into that D category. Chris Sale, and this is one of those guys that I was talking about that just simply did not have an impact on this first half. Not entirely his fault, obviously he was battling back from injury, but when we're grading the first half performances of people, you can't really grade it off of one singular appearance. The next guy we're going with is Bobby Dalbec, another guy in that F category. He's been okay on defense, definitely some really tough plays at first base and third base this year, and his hitting, while it has been better recently, has been terrible throughout the first half, so Bobby Dalbec gets an F for the first half of this year. Tyler Danish is the next guy we're going to talk about, and Tyler Danish is an interesting one. I'm going to put him in that C category. He's not as good as Austin Davis when it comes to reliability, but for the most part this year, he's had some pretty solid games. I don't think he's at the level of Ryan Brazier in terms of up and down, so we're going to give Tyler Danish in that C area. The next guy is Rafael Devers. This is a no-brainer, right? This is like the opposite of Matt Barnes. He had a fantastic first half. He's probably what, third, fourth, or fifth in MVP voting right now. Our only starting player on the All-Star team, leads the league in a crap ton of categories. One of the best years he's had in his career. This is a no-brainer. Next guy we're talking about is Jake Diekman, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I'm gonna put Diekman in the F category, mostly because he was brought in to be this reliable reliever, right? We spent very little money on the bullpen, and what we did spend, we spent a majority on Jake Diekman. He just simply has not been reliable for us this year. He's had pretty decent outings, but for the most part, he's been all over the place. He's been letting up a ton of runs. Jake Diekman has not been good in the first half of 2022. The next guy is Jarren Duran. Now, I'm going to put Duran in the C category for now, just because he had that absolutely great month of June where he was getting on base all the time. He was scoring a ton of runs, stealing bases, but since then, he has been falling off a cliff a little bit. He's getting eaten up by big league fastballs recently. He's not getting on base, so that speed and that power aren't shining through. And with the lack of defense that he's had, I just simply can't put him in that B or A category. So C is where I'm going to put Jarren Duran. The next guy we're talking about is Nate Eovaldi. Now, I know some of you guys are probably going to dispute this a little bit, but I'm going to go with Nate Eovaldi in the B category. Yes, he's been hurt a little bit, and the home run bug has been a big issue for him this year, but at the same time, he's a guy guy who's consistently this entire season gone out and gotten you less than 4 runs. I think there was really only one game where he let up more than 4 or 5 runs in a game. So I'm going to put him in the B category because he's been a constant, decent arm for the Red Sox this season. Franchy Cordero, and I'm going to put him in the... I'm debating between C and D. I kind of wish I did a C plus and D minus kind of thing, but I'm going to put him in D for now. And the reason I'm going to put him in D is because yes, he had those big moments at the plate, but his defense has been absolutely horrendous. I don't think he's had as much as an impact of Jarren Duran, but he still has a decent amount of impact. The fact that his defense has been terrible and he's 0 for his last 16 with 15 strikeouts, I'm going to put him in that D category. Again, if there was a D plus, C minus category, it'd probably be somewhere in there. So high Ds, low Cs for Franchy Cordero. The next guy we're talking about is Tanner Houck. I'm going to put Tanner Houck in the B category right there with Nate Eovaldi. Now, some of you guys are going to say that Corbin Houck hasn't been consistent this year, and you're probably right. But at the same time, Tanner Houck has done above average job in this first half at being a starter for the Red Sox, a long relief pitcher for the Red Sox, a middle relief pitcher for the Red Sox, and now in that closer role. And I think the fact that he has traveled throughout the entirety of this pitching staff, I think warrants a B rating. The next guy on this list is JD Martinez. I'm going to go JD with an A. I know that his power has been kind of lacking lately, but the fact that he has been consistently a guy who we can rely on to get a base hit, a double, get on base, he has had his best contact-wise season in a while, and I think JD Martinez in that heart of the order means a lot to this Red Sox team. I'm going to put him in the A category. The next guy on this list is Jeter Downs. Now, I was going to put Jeter Downs in the didn't make an impact category, but because he filled in pretty well in the Tampa series and he did pretty well in that New York series, we're going to give him a C. I think that his defense has been fantastic on the field. He's had some big time at bats. I still don't know if he's going to be an impact player for the Red Sox. I see him more as a trade piece, but while he's been on the field, I think he's done a decent job of impacting this game. The next guy we're talking about is Caleb Ort. And Caleb Ort, I'm going to put in the no impact yet. He's had really not a ton of innings so far. So to say that he has a huge impact on this team would be kind of foolish. We're going to put him in the no impact for now. This is a guy, though, that I expect to see a lot more of in the second half, especially because he's been fairly reliable out of the pen so far in the, 4 appearances that he's had. Kevin Plawecki. I love Kevin Plawecki. He's a great guy, but he is hitting a $150 right now at the major league level. He cannot field a baseball currently. He can't throw anyone out, and he's a terrible framer. He's right now a clubhouse guy strictly, and as much as I think the potential for the power is there, it's just not shining through. Kevin Plawecki did not have a great first half. The next guy we're talking about is Kike Hernandez. I'm going to put Kike right there with Christian Arroyo. His defense was really, really great, but his offense was really, really slow to start the year. He picked it up, and then he got injured. So until he comes back and can prove that he is in that C, B, A category, he's going into the D category. The next guy up is Cutter Crawford. I'm going to put him in the C. We saw the highest of highs from Cutter Crawford, and we saw the lowest of lows from Cutter Crawford. But all in all, I think the highs that he's had this season, especially stepping in a big way when our big starters went down, really bumped him up on this ratings list. So we're going to go with a C for Cutter Crawford. The next guy on this list is Nick Pivetta, and I'm going to give Nick a C because of the way that he held his own in June is the only reason he's in C right now. He did not do well against any AL East opponent except maybe the Blue Jays, and that's the only reason why I'm not putting him in the B category, and the reason I'm not putting him in the D category is because of his June, so he falls right in between at that C level. The next guy is Rob Refsnyder. Now we're going to put Rob in the B category. He really hasn't done anything to bump him down. He's been great offensively, he's been great defensively. I would love to see more of Rob Refsnyder in the second half, especially if the Red Sox don't make a ton of moves at the deadline. Rob Refsnyder in place of Jackie Bradley Jr. could be something we could see in the future. Rich Hill is the next guy on this list, and we're going to go Rich Hill in the C category. And the reason he's not lower is because of the fact that this was exactly what we were expecting from Rich Hill. We weren't expecting him to go out there with a 3.3 ERA and just absolutely shut down lineups, right? We were expecting him to be this back end of the rotation guy, under 5 ERA, give you 4, 5, 6 solid innings, and that's exactly what he's done this year. So in my opinion, Rich Hill, not above expectations, not below expectations. Next guy we're talking about, Hirokazu Sawamura. That is a quick D rating for me. I don't think that he has been as good Danish or Cutter Crawford. I don't think he's been as bad as Matt Barnes. So we're going to put Hirokazu Sawamura somewhere in between there. And that to me is the D rating. Next guy up, John Schreiber. We're going to put John Schreiber in the S tier. He's been A+ this first half. Fell apart a little bit in the last 2 appearances that he had. But before that, he was an absolute menace. He led the league in reliever ERA and stuff like that. So John Schreiber, probably the biggest surprise out of this first half of the season for the Red Sox. He definitely deserves to be up there with one of the best players on this team in the first half of 2022. The next guy up is Trevor Story. And I know some of you guys are going to debate this one hard, but I'm going to put him in the B category. The fact that he was able to move over from shortstop to second base and still have that Gold Glove caliber defense. Absolute work he puts in on the base pass when he gets on base has been fantastic. He's the second most home runs on the team. He has the most RBIs on the team. He's been really, really effective for us. Yes, that contact has been down, and that's the only reason I'm not putting him in that A category. He's come up in some big spots and went 1, 2, 3, especially against sliders outside. But because of the impact that he's had in the first half, he's going to be higher than some of these guys. The next guy up is Matt Strahm, and I'm also going to put Strahm in that B category. I think that Strahm was one of the best pickups that we had this offseason in terms of bullpen help. He was the guy like Jake Diekman who we decided to actually spend money on, and we're going to get to that in a second. He's been pretty solid. He had some tough outings. That hand that happened in Tampa was really tough, but I think all in all, he was one of our more reliable relievers. The next guy up is Christian Vasquez, who I'm going to put in the A category. He's had a ton of clutch hits for us. He's had a ton of RBI opportunities and come through. He's having one of his best offensive seasons in his entire career. Defense looks fairly solid. I don't know what more we could expect from Christian Vasquez in the second half than what he did in the first half. Next guy we're talking about is Alex Verdugo. Alex, I'm going to give a C. I think that his defense has improved a lot. I think he's really coming into his own in left field, but at the same time, he went through a terribly, terribly dry spot at the plate during this year. He's had some really clutch hits for us, but at the same time, I think that contact could get higher, and I think that he got unlucky for a lot of the season, yes, but there was also times where he kind of did it to himself. So we're going to put him in that C category. Not great, not bad. Definitely room for improvement for Verdugo in the second half. The next guy we're talking about is Michael Wacha, and we're going to give Wacha a B. Another guy who we picked up in this offseason, didn't really expect a ton from, but for the first half of 2022, while Wacha was healthy, he was one of the best pitchers on this team. And the only reason he's not in that A category is because he was a little bit shaky at times. I think that the A category is a pretty tough one to get into. For the most part, Wacha has been our best pitcher this year. We're going to put him in that B category. The next guy we are looking at is Garrett Whitlock, and this one is going to be a little bit of an interesting one to grade. Do you grade him off of the bullpen he did? Because if you're grading him off of his bullpen work, he's S tier. But because he also was a pitcher and his pitching probably put him somewhere in the C tier, I'm going to keep him right here. I think that we haven't seen the best of Garrett Whitlock yet. I also don't think we saw the worst of Garrett Whitlock, so I'm going to put him in that C category. I think now that he's back in that bullpen, though, he is going to make his way up at the end of the year gradings to even A, maybe even S tier. So for right now, C tier, but it's because we're combining his starting pitching with his bullpen. Josh Winkowski, the next guy on this list, I'm going to go with a C from Josh Winkowski too. I don't think that Josh Winkowski absolutely blew people away with his appearance when he first came up. He's definitely had some rocky roads, but he's also been the most reliable AAA pitcher that we brought up so far. I could see him sticking in this rotation for a while, especially with Chris Sale's injury. Nothing really fantastic out of Josh Winkowski, but nothing absolutely to tear your hair out about either. Xander Bogaerts is the last player on this list, and we're obviously going to put him in the A category, having his best defensive year so far in the first half of his career. He's having a great offensive year as well. Power numbers should be better than what they are, but the fact that he's getting on base so well and leads the shortstop category for a lot of things in the major leagues is why he's in the A category, but with that power lacking, we couldn't put him in that S tier. Now we are moving on to the managing portion of this season, and to be honest with you, I don't know where to put Alex Alex Cora. I think Alex Cora has done a decent job with the people that he's had, but at the same time, he's definitely made some mistakes. If this were 2018, and which is what I would consider Alex Cora's best year, you're looking at the S tier, right, in 2018. I don't think this is as good as that year, but I also don't think he had done a terrible job. I think he's just trying to manage this team with the pieces that they have, especially with the fact that a lot of these guys that you're supposed to rely on, the guys that you're supposed to keep going to, just simply keep letting you down and letting you down. And Alex Cora isn't deciding this roster, so he's trying to do the best with the tools that he's given. So I'm going to give him a C. I think that he's done a good job of doing that, but also at the same time, there have been some mistakes this year, so I can't give him a B or an A. And the last guy we are talking about is essentially Chaim Bloom, but we're going to say the front office in general. Didn't really want to put down like every owner's picture, right, and go through one by one. So we're using Chaim Bloom as sort of the face of the front office, which is basically what he is anyways. And we're going to give Chaim Bloom a D. I honestly think this is a little bit generous. I think there's a case to be made to give him an F on this list, but the reason I'm going to put him at D is because you have a couple of guys in that B, in that A range, in that S tier range that Chaim Bloom went out and got this offseason, but you can't help but not look at the fact that none of our cornerstone faces of the franchise players got signed this offseason. There was no help added to the bullpen when it was clear that the bullpen was going to be an issue. Once Bobby Dahlbeck turned out to be the way Bobby Dahlbeck did this season, there wasn't much to be done there by the front office. So this first half was really kind of a fault for Chaim Bloom. He's taken a lot of heat from it. I think the front office has a lot to do with this as well. But either way, this was a tough first half for Chaim Bloom. And that is my grading for the first half. There were only 2 players who I think performed to the best of their ability in this first half. A lot of players in that middle to low area. I think most people ended up in that C to F range, and that's not exactly what you want, but there's still an entire other half of baseball left. I know you guys are gonna have a ton of opinions on this video, so let me know down below which ones did I butcher, which ones did I not butcher, which ones did I get right, which ones did I get wrong. Let me know all your thoughts on this down below. As always, if you've made it to the end of this video, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys are hitting the like button on these videos. It helps it out a ton. And if you enjoy this video, share with a friend or family member who loves the Red Sox as much as you do. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.